Hello, we are going to groom Honey. This is Honey. She's a Cockapoo, and as you can see, she is extremely fluffy. But hurricane season is approaching rapidly, so all of this gorgeous fluff is going to have to come off because vanity just has to take backseat to practicality and comfort and cleanliness. So I'm going to go ahead and trim her down really nice and tight. This way she stays a lot less muddy. She needs to see also. You can see that her face needed a trim anyway. She's just getting a little fluffy. Honey can be a little bit difficult to groom, so you're going to see that she likes to try to give me kisses, and I think that's her way of trying to talk me out of grooming her. She sits down almost nonstop. So I'm actually put a little counter on so that you can see how many times she sits. And you'll notice that when she isn't sitting, I'm either holding her up or she actually has a loop around her midsection. For her body, we're using a 3F blade, which is 13 millimeters long. I'm going to use that for her body, her tummy, her chest, and her neck. First time, already sat down. That's what I expect out of her. She puts her head there, just kind of turn her around. When you're dealing with a dog that has a little bit of an issue with her feet, so she does have a little of an issue with her feet. She likes to turn her head around. She likes to sit down. Just take your time. Be slow. Be gentle. I know that a lot of professional groomers, they have to hurry, and so they have to work on time. But if you're grooming at home, you have time. So just take it easy. This video, by the way, is sped up so that you're not seeing how slow I am. Most of this is sped up, if you can see that. I'm not doing a ton of instruction in this video, just sort of showing the groom. I know a lot of people like to watch. I know I watch other groomers groom also. It's something enjoyable about watching all that fluff come off, I think. Now here, you can see that I'm holding some of the fur so that I can get through it. Do not ever pull when you're doing this, because if you do, you can lift the skin up and into the blade. So you don't want to do that. If you don't comb them out before you start clipping, you'll have to hold more fur. So comb out before. I didn't do that. I was trying to be fast, even though it took me a good 30 minutes, not including her head. So I'm going to be doing her legs and her rear end and her tail in a 5F, which is 6 millimeters long. So it's quite a bit shorter than the body, and I'm doing this again for cleanliness purposes. It's going to start getting really rainy. It was a pretty wet summer as it was, and these are the areas that are just the most likely to get really gross playing outside in the puddles. And I don't want to not let her be a dog and have fun, so it's easier to just keep her clean during the rainiest season. The final blade that I'll be using in this cut is a standard size 10, and I'll be using that just as a sanitary area cleanup, as well as the bottoms of the pads of her feet to keep the hair nice and short there, again, so she doesn't pick up too much mud. So you can see I didn't finish the whole body. I just did like a quick over of the body, and then I moved on to the legs, and I will go back to the body in a little bit. So you see me getting the legs here, and Honey is going to complain a little bit. She does not love having her legs done, but she's pretty sweet, and I just take my time. When you're working with your pup, if he or she does not like having a certain area done, the natural inclination for most people is to hold the area that you're trying to cut, like the foot, tighter or harder and more firmly. Don't do that. If you squeeze harder, your pup is actually going to fight you more. So the best thing that you can do is try to hold in a way that reduces their ability to pull, and certainly reduces their ability to pull in a way that actually injures them, and to not hold too firmly so that they don't feel like they're being squeezed or trapped too much. And just take your time, be a little bit firm with your voice. You can say, hey, stop it, or you can try to talk sweetly to them. You can take breaks, and you can always go back to that part and do it in little increments. And of course, just work on training for them to accept the groom in those areas. And if you do use a professional groomer, the more that you train and work on things, the more your groomer will appreciate you, because they do have a time limit, and it's hard to deal with dogs that fight a lot. And you can see here, she's fighting me on the leg a little bit. And so I'm going to move my hands up behind her elbow where I can just hook it, and she has a harder time pulling away from me without me having to squeeze her. And she gives me lots of kisses because she's very sweet, and that's her way of saying, hey, stop it. But she doesn't get to get out of the groom, so I do realize the camera angle was really bad. My head and my arms are in the way quite a lot in the video, so I apologize. I tried to cut out a lot of the parts where you really can't see anything, but a lot of the video is blocked by me, so I'll have to work on figuring out a camera angle that doesn't do that. You can see here that you can sort of see here that I'm trying to pull up the hairs between the pads of the toes and clean those up nice and tight. I'm really trimming her feet up really tight because, like I said, we're trying to avoid picking up too many rocks and mud on our walks through the woods and things like that. And here we're using the 10 blade, which is 1.6 millimeters, pretty standard, comes with all clippers to clean up the pads. And in between the toes, you just have to be gentle, especially if they fight you a little bit on the feet, so that you don't nick, and just be gentle with that. But it's good to get the pads of the feet cleaned up, especially if you're going to be dealing with mud or a lot of water. Keeps things clean. I'm also going to do the sanitary area here. Unfortunately, you can't really see that, but I'm just cleaning up around there so that she stays nice and pretty. Now that her feet are cleaned up, I'm going to use nail clippers, trim the nails back. So from a behavioral aspect, you can see that Honey isn't really thrilled with what's going on because her tail is tucked under, so she's not really happy about this. And she's exhibiting what is called fawning behavior, which is where she's giving lots of kisses, she's acting very sweet, and this fawning behavior is really excellent. It's an excellent response to stress. We really want to encourage and reward fawning as much as possible. It is much better than frozen in fear or aggression. So reward fawning. It's important to keep the table as clean as you can, but especially after clipping nails, just because you don't want those little tiny bits of hard nail to get on their feet, on the bottoms of their feet, because it would probably be pretty uncomfortable. So now I'm just going to use a curved pair of shears. You can't really see what I'm doing, but I am just rounding out the top of the feet. See, pulling up the hairs in between the toes that I didn't fully clip, and just rounding out the pads, making the feet nice and tight, and clipping around the pads of the feet, just making them look nice and clean and neat. Again, from a behavioral aspect, you can see here she pulled a little bit, she's licking her lips, and that is a sign of fawning and a little bit of stress. She's saying, I don't really love what you're doing, but she's being very sweet and cooperative, apart from, pulling a little bit. She's one of my more difficult dogs to groom, and as you can see, she's really not that difficult. It's important to maintain your patience and be really gentle and understanding. If you reward this sort of fawning behavior and you're very sweet with them, you will have a dog that will never get aggressive. Switching back to the 3F to finish the body now. Being frustrated and maybe getting rough or aggressive with the dog or impatient with the dog may progress the dog's behavior from sweetly objecting to potential fear or aggression, and you never want to do that, which is why having a groomer that is really sweet and loving is so important. And it's important to do your part as the owner at home to prepare your dog to accept grooming so that they can sit through the grooming process. And if you're doing the grooming at home, just remember to be patient. Laugh if they sit on you a bunch, think that it's cute and funny, reward their sweetness, and if you feel yourself getting frustrated, take a break. Just like with all training, when you're grooming and you're learning to groom your dog, or you are grooming your dog, it's just like any other training process. If you feel yourself getting frustrated, it's time to take a break. And there's no shame in that. It can be really frustrating. And if you're frustrated, chances are your dog is frustrated. So you should try to end on a good note. And if your dog looks patchy for a little bit, so what? Try again in a few hours, try again in a few days. Just like with all training, it's a process. So now I'm going to blend the shorter hair on the leg with the longer hair on the body by going against the grain, which is what you just saw me do. And finishing up the ribs. and the belly. She's just sitting on me. Sorry for all the views of the back of my head and my sloppy braid. I need a hairdresser. Probably as much as she did. And belly hair falling off. There it goes. Always be really careful in that sort of flank area. The skin there is really thin. It's super easy to cut them. So you always want to be really extra gentle and careful when you're grooming that spot. All the kisses. I wonder if she's just trying to groom me to say thank you because I'm grooming her. I just imagine that she is thinking, could you not? Since I'm letting her sit, I have to pull the skin tight so that I don't catch any wrinkles. So if you let your dog sit, make sure you pull the skin tight in a gentle way. And we're pretty much all done. I'm gonna clean up the hair, and then I'm going to put a blow dryer on low and fluff her out. And one of the reasons that I do this is that those little cut hairs can cause hair splinters. I know they cause them in me. I don't want them to cause them in her. And I'm just going to fluff her out, make sure that I get all the hair that's been cut, you know, those little hair shaving pieces out from the bottoms of her paws, fluff her up, and then I'm going to look her all over and make sure that she's relatively even. I try not to be too picky when it's my own dog. And then it'll be time for her head. She's very excited to be done. Come on, can we get down yet? But we still have to do her head. So I'm just looking her over, you can see, checking her out, making sure I didn't miss any funny patches anywhere. And that's it. She is all done with her body, just left to scissor her head. Here she is before, all kinds of fluffy, and here she is after, nice and clean and short.